Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central, and here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another fantastic episode of Foxborough Central. I am Bob Hickey, your host. Thanking you for taking the time to join me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. Now, I don't know if you are one who catalogs all the programs that we do, but I had the wonderful opportunity several years ago of meeting a dynamic group of students, high school students with the Rotary Interact Club. And one of those students has come back into my world. I met her a couple weeks ago at the Marilyn Robbins Center during an event. Fascinating young lady, and it's great to see that she is becoming even more than we even thought, and we thought she was going to be everything. So it's great to see you again,
nice
Allie
to see you.
Fisher. Allie, thank you for coming back on the program and giving us an update of you and your life.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Well,
Appreciate it.
when we talked last, you were a leader with the Rotary Interact, and then you graduated. When did you graduate?
In 2014, but I studied abroad for my senior year in Australia. So it was kind of like a gap year based on the school year when it finishes and ends.
A gap year,
yeah.
High school graduation year.
Yeah.
That's not your normal gap year, but we're going to go with it. So let's talk about Australia a little bit. I know it's way in the rearview mirror, but maybe, every step we take on the cobblestone path of life sort of leads to the next opportunity. So how was that being your senior year? Didn't you miss your friends? Did you Foxborough is clearly not going to hold you down. So talk about Australia.
Yeah, it was definitely weird having to make an entirely new group of friends senior year when everyone thinks they're going to be spending time with people they've known their whole lives. But it was really wonderful. I was at an international high school, so it was 40% students from all over the world, but I was the only American there. So my nickname became Miss America, which I couldn't complain about. And I really worked on French, which helped me later on, absolutely. So I took a lot of high-level French classes. I volunteered with Rotary again, and I also found a homeless shelter to volunteer at, which I really enjoyed. And I had a lot of fun. I was 18. I was alone in Australia. I had my own apartment. I got to be independent, so it was wonderful.
Wow, awesome. So then, your parent, Janet is your mom, and everybody here in Foxborough, of course, knows the family, but you've not come back to Foxborough. You went on to college.
Yeah.
And where'd you go to college at?
James Madison University in Virginia.
Still there?
Still there. One more year. Yep.
And how do you like JMU?
I love it. Really, it was the mountains that drew me, and I didn't actually go for the business college, which I am in now, and which is the thing that JMU is most known for. But now I am in the business college. I switched to economics after having my first ever class in economics and loved it.
Okay.
So it's beautiful, and I have great friends there, and it's all good.
Fantastic. You have another year to go.
Yep.
So graduate of, knock on wood, of 2019 at JMU.
Yes.
Where do we see us going? But before we even get there, let's talk about where you're at now, because you're certainly not just your typical college student. It sounds like I met you at an event we had at the Marilyn Robbins Center. It was Ray Samity Day, and you had sort of started talking about some things that you're doing, and I've never known anybody to do this mix of things. So what did you do your freshman year out of college? We're going to start at the beginning.
Sure.
So we're done with Australia. You come back home, or did you come back home, or did you go directly somewhere else?
I did come home and worked for a while to pay off Australia.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
All right. And then Australia happens in the rearview mirror. The next opportunity is what?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Summer after sophomore year, I studied abroad in Paris. So that was where I would say I achieved an advanced level of French, but not quite yet fluency. My best friend's family lives there, so we got to visit in Grenoble in the mountains, and then did a literature and culture and history set of courses in Paris. So it was really beautiful, a lot of fun, and I learned a lot.
Wow. So you're taking immersion to the next level.
Trying to. I think it's necessary to learn any language. So
what did you learn over there? What were you studying?
Yeah, so like I said, it was literature courses, so a lot of absurd theater. So we went to some plays, and definitely very bizarre. Just the clock will ring 40 times and they'll say it's the 40th hour, something that makes absolutely no sense at all.
How interesting, though.
So we did that, and then history, why Bastille Day is Bastille Day, and it was really enriching, especially the literature I appreciated the most. So yeah.
Of course, I'm here talking with Allie Fisher, who is really grabbing life by both horns and taking it for a ride. We're a fascinating young person who I suspect we're going to hear much more from later, but we're going to grab her now while she's still here in Foxborough. I suspect Foxborough isn't going to hold you in, but we're going to take advantage while we can. So your freshman year is in Paris. And
so summer after
France.
sophomore. Yeah.
All right. And then from there, you got interested in helping people?
Yeah, so my favorite quote is by E.B. White, who also wrote Charlotte's Web, and it's, I wake up in the morning trying to decide between helping the world and enjoying the world. It makes it hard to plan the day. So that for me, I love to travel, I love to meet new people, speak new languages if possible, but I also want to give back, and so I figure I need to get an education to do that. And so studying abroad has been a perfect fit for me because it allows me to both do things I enjoy and also get my education so that later I can help people. I struggle to say that I've already done a lot of helping because I think just going to a place where a lot of people are living in poverty doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything to help. Even if I spent a few weeks doing something that we'll talk about my internship, but even if I spend a little bit of time helping others, I don't think I necessarily helped in a really sustainable way, and that's my goal for the future.
Well, that's being a little humble, but we'll go with it right now. Let's talk about that internship. So as you get into your education, you then got involved with helping people. And I know that from the core, being here in Foxborough, and all they did with Rotary Interact is a great example.
Yeah.
You have that bone in your body, but now, what is this internship? What are we talking about? You ended up going to Cameroon, I believe?
Yep. Yeah. So
How does one end up in Cameroon?
Yeah, so I was looking for a program that was in French-speaking Africa that was focused on economic development, and honestly, it was the only one of its kind. So it's through the School of International Training, which is based out of Brattleboro, Vermont, and they have study abroad programs all over the world that pretty much always include a language. And they also, so my director there was Cameroonian herself, and we had 2 Cameroonian girls in our class along with 7 other American girls, and so it was nice to really feel like we were being immersed into the culture and not just with all Americans in another country. So that was really great, and at the end of the study abroad program, after we finished all of our classes, we each did 4-week internships or research projects.
Really? In Cameroon?
Yep.
So what was your research project?
Yeah, so mine was internship based, and then I did a little bit of research about what future students could do for the organization. So the organization is called Bakuda, that's the acronym, so it's the Bagili Cultural and Development Association.
I'm glad you said it. I'm not going to say it, but you can see it on the graphics on the screen, and that's the way we're going to do it for the rest of the day, because I'm not going to attempt that one. It would be unfair.
So the Bagili are a group of people that used to live off the land in the rainforest, near the coast of Cameroon. So Cameroon is located in central Western Africa.
Okay.
And so these people were kicked off of their land due to large corporations, mainly ones that are French-owned or Belgian-owned, and these companies came in and wanted land for rubber plantations or cocoa plantations, and these people basically had nowhere to go because they didn't have any formal land titles, and so they were forced to move really close to other groups living outside of the rainforest in villages. And
this is in Cameroon?
Yes, near a city called Kribi.
Okay, so was this ancient history, 1600s, 1700s, or is this recent?
So as far as them getting kicked off of their land, that's very recent, within the last 40 or so years, I believe. But we actually don't know how long they've been in Cameroon. They've been there for as long as we know. Mm-hmm. And so being kicked off of their land, they lived off of it. They depended on it for everything: food, water, medicine. And initially did not know how to do agriculture. And so the other groups of people would exploit them almost like slaves. So they would work 10, 12-hour days for one meal. Or there's also a problem with alcoholism. So sometimes half a bottle of palm wine or something like that. So it's a pretty sad situation for them.
So the Bengali as a people have been displaced. And this internship then did what? To identify, to help, to understand?
So part of my role was communication. So I made a Facebook page, I made a website, and then I also started making flyers for them to have at events. And then another aspect was to actually go into the field. So some days we'd be on a motorcycle with 3 people on the motorcycle, 5-kilo bags of rice and tomatoes, and just totally weighed down. And we'd go on that motorcycle for up to 8 hours. So 4 hours there, 4 hours back. And sometimes we'd break down, we'd get mud all over us. I mean, it was quite the experience, and I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't always easy. And so we'd go out and we'd get to a small village where there were the Bagili and then the other group of people, typically the Bantu people, living together. And we would strike up a deal. So government officials would be there, the chief of the Bantu and then also the leader of the Bagili community would meet together, and the Bantu would sign over land saying it belonged to the Bagili, and that they could then do agriculture on that land so that they would finally have a title.
Really?
So that was a lot of what we did, and then I would do interviews with the government officials and the leaders of each community.
So you did some real work down there.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's, again, you had your humble thing going on before, but it sounds like you've done some significant work as far as creating change, and now you start. So Facebook pages and web pages, what is the point of these?
Yeah, so a lot of the time within Cameroon, the sources of funding get dried up very quickly, and there's just not a lot. And so you really need to appeal to international funders, people who want to donate. And when you don't have a website, nobody can do that. Nobody knows who you are.
Because this is the 21st century, and that is the way it works these days. Yes.
Right. So it was really helpful from that end, and then also, nobody in the organization speaks English, so it's either French or Bagili. And so I was able to go in, and the website, each website is in both French and English.
Okay.
So people from wherever.
Is Bagili a language that is close to French? Are you able to communicate, or is it?
No, I know that awa is thank you, and I said that a lot, but that was about the only thing that I really, that I could.
Well, okay then. So if people wanted to go to this website and support the Bagili cause and to help them, where does this money go to, by the way?
Yeah, so a lot of the projects in the field, so securing land and then buying agricultural items, they also support different schools for Bagili children.
Okay.
So they will sponsor a child to go to school, which means a backpack filled with notebooks, all the books they need, shoes, clothing, because they wear uniforms. And then they also are fed at school, because a lot of the time, although they now are learning how to do agriculture, they're still, if they're only growing cocoa, then the rest of the food they eat is just what they find, because they don't really have a lot of money to buy things from any sort of market, and markets are also far away. So they're just eating what they can find, and then their nutritional level is not where it should be.
So it sounds like a very important cause that is worthy of support.
I think so, yeah.
If you want to support the Bagili people, in this project that Ali Fisher, my guest, has been working on for the past, how long have you been working on this?
Just since May.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Very important. It's www.bacudacam.com. Bakudacam.com. What does that mean, Bakudacam?
So Bakuda, the name of the organization, Bagili Cultural and Development Association, the acronym, and then CAM for Cameroon.
Excellent. Hopefully that'll be a good way for you to remember it. You'll see it on the screen. You can also be their friend on Facebook by going to the Bagili Cultural and Development Association. Did I say that correctly?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So it is possible to teach this little dog something new. I'm glad to hear that I didn't butcher that. Thank you so much. You can be their friend on Facebook. Ali also is able to be reached at her email address, which is afisher@newgenpeace.org. So let's talk about New Gen Peace. What is New Gen Peace?
Yeah, so in the fall of my junior year, so last year, I had the opportunity to do a program called New Gen Peace Builders, so New Generation Peace Builders. And so what it does is it provides a couple of weekend-long conferences for young people. In my case, it was ages 18 to 24, to go and learn about peace. So a lot of the time in school, we learn that peace is the absence of war. And maybe peace is alternative dispute resolution or something that you need a doctorate to be able to do. And we don't learn a lot of practical ways to create more peaceful communities. So we define peace really broadly, meaning access to water and just good community relationships, whether that be around issues like politics or whatever. And so after those conferences, and we also talked about inner peace and meditated and talked about how you need to be feeling peaceful on the inside in order to be able to even commit the time and not be distracted from creating a more peaceful community outside of you.
Seems common sense, but at the same time, how many of us do get caught up with our lives and don't take that time for ourselves? Very healthy approach.
So it was really wonderful. And then at the end of those couple of conferences, we split into teams. So there were 5 different teams that varied between 2 and 5 people. And we had to plan and implement a peace project within 8 weeks. So my peace project, I was on a team called Connected Across Culture. And we did a dialogue between Sudanese refugees in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and the police there. Because so many refugees have had really traumatic experiences with authority, and we figured sometimes if a Sudanese refugee were to be pulled over, they would be so nervous and seem so guilty that the officer would be really suspicious about why they were acting so strangely. So we talked about ways to communicate with police officers and things like that.
Now, this is why I love talking to people, because you learn something new and something thought-provoking. I'm from that area. I'm from Winchester, which is just a little bit north of Harrisonburg. And I would not have thought of Harrisonburg as being an enclave for Sudanese refugees. How are you finding this to be a community?
So Harrisonburg is actually a sanctuary city right now. And so there are, the Sudanese community, I mean, there's got to be at least 150 refugees. And I became friends with one woman who is Sudanese and spent a lot of time with her. Her name is Hajer. And so I figured that was a good community to work with for a project because I already knew them and had positive.
French is the language?
It is not. They speak Arabic. There are a couple of different languages in Sudan, but the common one is Arabic.
Okay. You are a woman of many talents. I'm very impressed. So the Sudanese community now in Harrisonburg, which, and for those of you who are not familiar, Harrisonburg I think is probably safely described as a city. Not very large. It's nestled in the mountains in the Shenandoah Valley. Not a lot of industry. There's some finance, but mostly it's a farming community surrounding it. So how does it become a sanctuary city, and then how do you, as a student, identify that there's a need here and then take that step to, let me help?
Yeah, so Hajer actually told me a story. So in Harrisonburg, there's an international festival every year because there are so many people from different places. I believe right now in the high schools, only about 50% of the students are actually born in the U.S.
That's fascinating.
And so she was
it's not a port city, and it's in the middle of, I won't say nowhere, but it's definitely not on the beaten path.
A lot of the refugees, unfortunately, work in the poultry industry, and
which is strong there,
right.
And that makes sense.
And they're treated pretty badly there, and working on getting better rights in the workplace now, but it's difficult. But so she was at this international festival where people from over 40 different cultures meet, and there are tables, and the whole community shows up. So thousands of people. It's really beautiful. And she was going to speak. And she was in her traditional Sudanese dress, and she was wearing high heels, and she was walking to where she was going to speak, and a cop came over, and he was in a golf cart, and he said, "Hey, Jer, hop on the golf cart, and I will give you a ride to where you're going to speak." So she had met him before, but she still felt so uncomfortable around just police in general that she said the whole ride she was sitting like this, wouldn't look at him. She said thank you, again, didn't look at him, and got off as quickly as she could. So hearing that story just made me think about my own experiences with police and, the whole, oh, I had a headlight out. Oh, don't worry about it. Just wanted to let you know, get it taken care of. And I've never had a negative experience. And just imagining the fear that if I had ever had a bad experience, that I would experience every time I saw a cop. So.
And I think that's a great story because for those of us who are, whether we know it or not, have certain privileges that others do not have. Right. It's always not necessarily a slap, but at least an awakening that, oh, you know what, we don't all have certain advantages. So what a great story. Thank you for sharing. Of course, I'm talking with Allie Fisher, who is a 2014 graduate of Foxborough High School, is currently a JMU student, is currently changing the world one internship or one project at a time. You can support her in the cause with the Bagili. Thank you so much by logging on to www.bacudacam.com. That's bacudacam.com. A little bit more about what she's doing, what she's up to, what she has done, and see if you can be supportive of the way she is able to help them. So I'm going to give you the last word in a second. We're so close to being out of time. No. But you can also be her friend on Facebook at the Bajili Cultural and Development Association. Reach out to her on email at afisher@newgenpeace.org. I want to ask about New Gen Peace. So what is New Gen Peace really trying to do?
Yes.
What are you doing there and what do you want them to do?
Right now I am doing research. We're trying to bring the program to Serbia and then later the Balkans and also East Africa. Right now, Burundi and Rwanda. So right now, it's just a bunch of Skype calls laying the foundation. And there's actually a team in Serbia right now that I'm helping to manage, and they're doing a lot of interviews and a lot of work. So that's the hope. The UN said that they think New Gen Peace Builders is infinitely scalable. So that's really exciting. We're just looking for more funding for that, yeah.
Well, as entering your senior year and a business major, you will certainly hopefully bring that combination of compassion, humanitarian outreach services, and business acumen to the table, which means you're going to be quite a resource going down the road, as well as being a great leader.
Thank you.
And a nice person.
Thank you.
So Allie Fisher, I'm going to give her the last word. If there's something you want everybody here in Foxborough to know about you, 3 years out of high school, what would that be?
3 years out of high school.
And by the way, before we get to that, I noticed the lovely dress you're wearing. You mentioned that it is from where?
From Cameroon. My friend's aunt made it for me while I was there, and it cost the equivalent of about $8.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I apologize. I knew that we wanted to talk about that, and I had no good way of segueing it, so I just sometimes just toss it right out there. Allie, tell us something.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me here. It's exciting to be back, and I think people, it's exciting that I've been traveling, and I have the travel bug, but I think people can always give back and do something good no matter where they are, whether that's locally, regionally, internationally, and I don't think that I'm doing anything better or more important just because it's abroad, but it is fun for me and I enjoy it, so that's why I'm doing it.
And all good work, that's worth doing, and if it's not fun, then why do it? But at the same time, you're making such a difference, and it sounds like you're going in places. I think you just rattled off 19 different countries over the course of the last half hour that you've either been in or working with or helping to support, so good for you for making a difference out there. Allie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, everybody, for joining me as we get an update on one of our favorite high school students and local people, Allie Fisher. For those of you who are wondering how you can be a volunteer here at Foxborough Cable Access, let me tell you, stop by our studios here at 28 Central Street. Stop on in, say hi to Marg Nash. She's at the front desk. She'll tell you all about how to become part of our family. Members of the family here at Foxborough Central include Betty Travers, Deb Storrs, and Mike Stewart behind the cameras, Paul Beck behind the glass, and Ryan and Tyler and Lauren and Mike Weber, our executive director, all the great people that really come together and make this program possible. Wouldn't be possible without your viewership, without great guests like Allie Fisher. So until next time, hope to see you here at Foxborough Central. Take care, everybody.